Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your host for the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, and additionally, your beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders for Sports Illustrated. It's great to be with you today. We've got a lot of things to get into. Got 3 emails from you, the listeners, I want to read. And then we're going to really talk about a Raiders position group. We're going to talk about the defensive backfield. We're going to talk about 8 players specifically. There are other players on the roster who play in the defensive backfield, but they're ones that up to this point, either the investment in them is not significant enough to discuss because there's not been enough experience, but it doesn't mean they don't have a shot. It just means we're going to talk about those top 8 guys, 4 corners, 4 safeties today individually. We're going to get into a bunch. I got a quick email that I want to read. This one comes to us from Ben D. And Benjamin. Benjamin says to me, Hondo, you mentioned that you did not like the trade for Stefan Diggs. I'm always interested in getting your analysis of what happens. I know this isn't a Raider question if you can fit it in. Okay, so I'm gonna make this relevant to the Raiders, and then everything else today is all Raiders. But I wanted to get into this real quick. Ben, here is why I didn't like the trade. Stefan Diggs is an incredibly talented young man that comes with some locker room concerns. I don't think that you would call them failures, but I think concerns is a very fair adjustment. Now, you have to understand everybody approaches a football team differently. I come from an approach where the people that I respect, the people who put up the most Super Bowls, I follow a lot of what they do. I've never understood in business or in anything else if you see somebody who's super successful, not trying to garner as much information. Now, you still have to be you and still have to do it yourself. I look back at the Bills last year when he wasn't um, the main target, they were better. Again, just some things that I think bring concerns with Stefan Diggs. And I am a big culture locker room guy. I've always been that way. It's just the way I've always approached the game. It's why people who were so successful at it influenced me. Now, you bring Stefan Diggs in. Now, I would not have made this move if I was Houston, except now some more information has come out that although I still would not have done it, it makes more sense. So the Houston Texans take 3.5 million of his money that's guaranteed for next year. They move it to this year because they have the cap flexibility. And then they voided the last 3 years of his deal, which were smoke and mirrors anyways. So essentially, they can let him go and be done with him. It's a 1-year deal, essentially. So it now tells him, hey, if you want to go somewhere else, you better be on your best behavior, or possibly stay here. You better be on your best behavior. It's a prove it type situation. And they're going all in for this year. So do I think it makes more sense? Yes. I also trust DeMeco Ryans a lot. And if who knows the conversation he had with Diggs? Was it a situation like we've saw many times with the Patriots where they told a guy, listen, we're going to structure your contract. If you do well and behave, you'll make a lot of money. But if you don't, we cut you and it doesn't cost us anything. We're going to keep our eye on you. So, Ben, thank you for asking. Now, let me tell you why it applies to the Raiders. Because the Raiders are very similar presently under their present leadership to my style, which is you have to guard the locker room. And it's not just bringing in a player with talent. You have to bring in players with talent who don't hurt the rest of the team. Okay, I'm going to go back and share this story with you. I've told you guys this story before, but it's very pertinent. A few years ago, there was a player who was exceptional player, not good, exceptional. And again, this was just a few years ago, and he fit very well for a team that was drafting because of a unique situation in a spot that they normally didn't draft. at a position of major need. So as I'm going through talking to executives and getting the information that I've gotten, I said to my friend who works for that group, are you going to pick him? I mean, that seems like a natural fit. Everybody had this guy mocked to them. And he said to me, I will tell you privately, I don't, and I obviously would not never have reported this at the time. I just was the only one not mocking them to them. He said, that guy is going to probably be a Hall of Fame player, but he's never going to win a championship. And I said, explain what you mean by that. And he said, he's going to go out and he's going to party all night. And then he's going to show up at practice the next day and be great. He's going to party all night and show up at a game and get huge numbers. He's going to be fine. The problem is he makes all of his teammates around him because they want to be with him. He's the star and he's a very likable guy. They want to be with him. And so the problem is the 4 or 5 guys that go out with him aren't going to be at their best. And he goes, and that was fascinating to me. He goes, his college coach, and who the person I was speaking to, the two of them are very close, told me, he said, great player, worst mistake we ever made, bringing him on our team. And back then there wasn't the transfer portal. There wasn't really, guys would get cut, but it'd have to be a legitimate, really, 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 and they would not have gotten rid of this player. So that guy's on his way to the Hall of Fame, never won a championship. So I'm not saying Stefan is that guy. I'm just using that as an example of you've got to be so careful who you bring in. And there are times when fans say, oh my God, we got to have this guy. Well, okay, but then you got to pump the brakes. What kind of guy is he? What kind of guy is he? Is he a locker room presence? Is he a guy that's going to fit in the locker room, hold the locker room together? He's going to add to the culture. Is he a guy that's going to need a little bit of babysitting? That's fine. You can have some of those guys on your team if you've got strong leaders. You can't have a bunch of them, but you can have some. So I just think that is a great question, Ben. And that's kind of how, again, you got to look at every player that way. I have seen over my career many, many people say to me, Hondo, do we got to have this guy. This guy's got to be our guy. No, I don't agree. You got to have people on your squad who fit. And again, if you've got strong leaders, and the Raiders do, you can bring in certain guys. You just can't have a ton of them. It doesn't hurt the culture. I mean, it doesn't help the culture. Let's get another one. Well, we'll get to those. We'll get to those, the other emails at the end. Let's get right into the defensive backfield. So let's start. And I want to talk about Jaycee Bennett. He's a corner coming into his second year. He was a Raider. I mean, Maryland Terrapin, and the Raiders had another guy on his team who was very highly rated. And as film of that guy just started evolving, you naturally watch, and you saw JB. Now, JB is incredibly fast and incredibly aggressive. If you go back to last year, to when he was picked, you can go back and watch what I said about him. And this is what I said. When you look at JB, one of the things that stands out about him is he's very fast and very aggressive. So he'll come up when he sees a quarterback running or a running back or whatever and want to have a collision. He plays corner super fast, but he plays corner like he plays it with the mentality of a linebacker. Now, I also told you last year, one of his weaknesses is that because of that aggression, a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes can take off running, stop right at the line of scrimmage, and since he's come up, toss over his head. It's a learning curve. Okay, JB comes in, looks really good early. Okay, jumped in, took the reps against um, Devontae, where everybody looked bad, but he took them. He wanted those reps. He wanted to get better. Okay, I very similar to Byron Young, begin to struggle with confidence. Okay, now that's natural in a rookie world. Very few rookies ever come in and don't have a crisis of confidence. Excuse me. Excuse me. For most rookies, it is the first time in their lives that they ever are made to look bad. In Pee Wee, in high school, they shine. They get to college and they may have, a couple of moments depending on who they go against. But for the most part, they shine. Then they get to the pros and everybody's good. Now, I have seen immense amount of comments about Jacorian. I referenced him last week as a guy that I think could take a step this year. I don't know if he will. I know he's working hard this offseason. I know he's doing what he needs to do to get over that hump, to get that confidence back. And I'm stunned at the vitriol. Oh, he sucks. He's terrible. The only thing he's gonna I saw one person, I wish I remember who it was. I would credit them, although I don't think it's a comment that I'd be proud of. Only place he'll potentially break out is in China. I mean, just stupid comments. As if nobody in this world ever lets anybody grow. If you want to throw away players, that's certainly your prerogative as a fan. But as a journalist, whose my job is not to be a fan, my job is to live in Realville and be anchored in reality. That young man has a lot of talent. That young man is a very good football player. That young man, like 99% of rookies, went through a crisis of confidence, but he's got a massive upside. I'll tell you what, for all the people that just want to throw guys away, it must be nice being perfect. Either that or you are so miserable with you in your life that you just attack everybody. This kid has the tools. Now, I have no idea if he's going to break out. All I do in my life is I judge as an analyst experience based on past track record, gives me the information to make an assessment. Now, I don't know what JB is going to do. I know the talent he had coming into the league. I saw him shine early. I saw him hit the confidence issues, and I know he's working hard this offseason. I know the team still believes in him. Okay. So, with all of that being said, I'm not willing to throw that kid away at all. He's coming into year two. Remember, you give those kids through year three. You let them try to show you something unless it's just a total. And like Alex Leatherwood was. I mean, you just knew. They're just I don't need to get into it. Good kid. You just knew that this isn't going to work. You saw that. You did not see that with JB. And he's a guy I think is going to make the squad. He's a guy I can't wait to talk to during OTAs and minicamp, and just getting from him, where he's at. I want to get in his head a little bit. But this is a guy that, don't throw him away. Those of you that are sane and are reasonable, don't throw that kid away yet. There's a lot of talent with him. And quite frankly, if you look at his God-given talent, he's got an opportunity to be a Jack Jones, to be a legit player. And sometimes you just need somebody to believe in you. I mean, Jim Plunkett, Look at Rich Gannon. Look at Colton Miller. Look at Peyton Manning. Look at Reggie Wayne. He was a guy after 1 year, they were ready to torch and fire him, kill him. Not kill him, but kill his career. Ends up being a Hall of Famer. It just takes time. It amazes me how everybody wants that for their life, but doesn't want to give it to other people. JB is a guy, I believe in him. Now listen, I wish you could go back. I said these same things about Malcolm Kuntz. He's terrible. He's trash. Get rid of him. I hope all of you that said that, and there were a lot of you, and you know who you were. I hope you at least have the integrity if you begin, oh, the Raiders got to give him a long-term deal. I hope you at least have the integrity to say, wow, I was wrong, and maybe start judging other players differently. It takes an adjustment. There has to be time. I'll give you another one. I'm a father. And when you have a lot of children, you learn that your children adapt at different things, different ways. Okay, I'll never forget one of my children. Their 2-year molars came in at 24 months, 25 months. Okay, Dexter Ernest Wayne, my youngest son, my 20-month-old right now, he's only 20 months, starting to cut his 2-year molars. It's just let people grow at their different levels. Let people adjust at certain levels, but you don't throw people away. That kind of draft pick, you don't throw them away. You let them grow as long as they're doing their part. As long as they're putting the effort and the time in, give him a chance to grow. He may turn out to be a Malcolm Kuntz. You never know. Now let's talk about Brandon Facyson. He's coming into his 7th year. Face, man. This is a guy that was really good with the Raiders. They make the change. Josh McDaniels and everybody, they let him go. And then they really suffered for it. And I said at the time when they let him go, I thought they were making a mistake. So last year they come back and re-sign him. He gets injured and essentially missed the season. He's a guy that's very intriguing. He has played at a very, very high level. Last year was an injury related. He's not a guy that I would consider a constant injury risk. Very hard worker, very good player. He's played at the Raiders at a very high level. So I don't think you throw that guy away. Coming into year 7, I don't think you want him to be a starter per se in his 7th year. I think you'd like to go get a QB1 and stay with a younger group if you can. But this is a guy who's he's a great veteran. He's wonderful in the locker room. He's great with other players. He's great with young players. You never worry about Face doing anything stupid. At least you haven't up to now. He's a calming influence, and he's a good influence. So there's Face on there. I think he's going to be very interesting to watch, depending on how many corners they draft, depending on how those corners do. I mean, I think he's got a legitimate shot, but he is a very good player. He's a great presence. Again, when you build your roster, you're constantly asking yourself, all right, what kind of player is he? Rock solid 1. Okay. Maybe great backup special teamers. What are they like in the locker room? Those are all things you look at, especially when you got a young team like the Raiders. Do we have guys in that room is there a leader in there? Is there somebody that just has a leadership role that we like the way they conduct themselves? They're a great asset to the Raiders. Now, the less of a star you are, the more that stuff comes into account. This is why Devontae Adams and Max Crosby are so valuable to the Raiders. They are the 2 best guys at their position. Okay, not just on the team. I think they're the best in the league. And they're both superstars. They're both very hard workers, and neither one of them is a nightmare off the field. Neither one. They are professional, they're hard workers, all of it. So you love it when your best players are your hardest workers. Okay. So they're an anomaly. They are unicorns. They're great players who are great in every area. But when a guy isn't your best player, but he's still a good player, then you start looking at, okay, how would they do at special teams? Or if they're not a special teamer, they're my one, but they're not the best in the league. What's their influence in my locker room going to be? What's the influence in my locker room going to be? Are they going to grab a young player and say, hey, shut your mouth? Are they going to go over to a young player and say, hey, I'm hearing some things about you. Why don't you come over and have dinner? I'm not going to say who, but I know a Raider um, that told me he regularly would bring rookies over to his house. This was not last year. Not going to say when, but and have them have dinner with him and his wife, and would grab the young guns and just say, "Hey, come on over." You want that type of influence. Face is going to be that kind of guy. All right, then Jack Jones coming into his third year. Now, Jack is a unique player. Jack is extremely talented, super talented. Had some issues in New England, got cut, picked up by the Raiders, picked up by the Raiders, and played unbelievably well. He's a young man that um, uh, his relationship with Antonio Pierce is like a father-son. I'm not saying he doesn't have a dad. I'm just saying that they're very close. And Pierce loves him, doesn't like him, loves him. And he's a guy that has immense talent, and he's a guy that has potential to be a legitimate superstar, not a good player. He has the potential to be a superstar. You a couple times he gets super emotional. Guys have had to go put an arm around him or just tell him to stop. And to his credit, he takes it. He takes the coaching. He's teachable. There's an old adage, you want people who are fat, faithful, available, and teachable. That's Jack Jones. When Jack Jones earns your loyalty, you're in for life. He's teachable. If he knows that you love him, he'll listen to you. Now, he's not going to listen to outside noise, but he's going to be teachable and he's available. The guy shows up ready to go to work. I am a believer in Jack Jones. I love redemption stories. I love to watch people who have been through some stuff and end up on top. I love that. That is my I don't understand. I was at dinner last night with some friends, and um one of the friends made a comment, man, you're positive. And I said, yeah. So when we uh yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't want to say too much, but I said, I am. I approach life like it's half full. When I wake up in the morning, I'm ready to go. I'm so blessed to be alive. I like people like that. And so I'm not looking for reasons not to believe in people. Sometimes in my job, that's difficult because I have to present to you what I'm hearing. Okay, so just understand that um when you look at people, believe in them until they give you a reason not to. Believe in them. And then believe that they can turn it around. Now, I'm a rugged individualist. I believe in the power of the individual. They have to make a choice. You can't be emotionally involved in someone past the point where they're committed. That's stupid. I learned that from my dad. Don't be so much a believer in people past the point where they believe, because that's where you get hurt. How many times in your life have you believed in people more than they did, and they did stupid stuff? I have a friend that had a child, and he and his wife spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get their child drug and alcohol rehab. They sent him to rehab after rehab. They did everything they could for their child. Well, the child ended up dying, and they dealt with massive amounts of guilt when they did everything that they could do. I remember one day he and I were fishing, and I just said to him, brother, you and your wife did more than most parents would have ever done. Your child made their decisions. And I'm not in any way putting a Jack Jones's drugs or anything like that. That's not the truth. It's a point of, I try not to believe in people more than they believe in themselves. And Jack Jones is the kind of guy who he's worth believing in. And the Raiders did something last year, and I talked to Antonio Pierce about this at the NFL owners meetings. And if you didn't see that video, you need to go back and watch it. But at the NFL owners meetings, I told him this team believed in Jack before he ever played it down. They just came in and loved him. And so Jack loves the team. How'd you do that? And he got into a lot of detail and talked about, he went to some of the key leaders and said, listen, I've known this kid a long time. Has he had some issues? Yes, but I believe in him. I need you guys to love him up. So Jack gets to the Raiders. Whole team just loves him and believes him. Not after the touchdowns, not after the interceptions, not after the great plays. Before. And he's like, wow, this is a family. And now he is a Lowell Raider, man. He's loyal to the silver and black, loves his teammates, loves the team, loves you, the fans. It's good to believe in people. Don't throw people away. Don't throw people away. Okay, the next one. Let's talk about Nate Hobbs. Nate's coming into year 4. He's a special player now. He's special. You may remember year 2, the coaching staff that was here, one person in particular who I won't mention because I don't want to be piling on, and I was asked to back off, so I will. Decided to prove they're smarter than everyone else, and so they take a kid who, as a rookie, shined on the interior and moved him out. Makes no sense. And so his sophomore year was not good. Then last year he goes back where he should have been in the slot, made some big play Hobbs. And now he's in year 4, poised for an extension. But this young man, he's a real deal. I think personally, in my opinion, if not the best, he's 1B slot corner in the NFL. Just big player, big hits. Good kid, by the way. He's just fun. Just a really, really good kid. I like him a lot. That's a guy earlier in his career had a little bit of an issue. A little bit. I think it was overrated. And some people are like, get rid of him. No. Good kid. I like Nate a lot. And I think he's got superstar potential. He is physical. He's such a hard worker. Just a tremendously hard worker. Very excited about Nate this year. Then we start going over to safety. And again, you can go back and look at videos that I did last year before the season. Marcus Epps. So here's a guy that is going into his his second year of the Raiders. He's the quarterback of the Raiders' defensive backfield. Let me tell you a couple things about Epps. He is tough as nails. This guy's tough, 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 tough. Last year, Dave Ziegler really wanted a Max Crosby type leader at all three levels of the defense. So he had Max, goes out and gets Robert Spillane, goes out and gets Marcus Epps. Now, Marcus Epps came from the Super Bowl champion, came off the Super Bowl playing team, the Philadelphia Eagles. They didn't win it, but they played in the Super Bowl. They really wanted to keep him, but they were not able to keep him financially. And they had some young guys that they developed behind him. So the Raiders got him. There was a market for Epps and a good market for Epps, but he wanted to be with the Raiders. And Marcus comes in. Now, did he have the stat line that everybody thought he would last year? No. But remember, there's a lot about football that doesn't show up in a stat line. I told you when we talked about defensive tackles, there is a ton that goes on with defensive tackles, that eating of space that doesn't show up. Okay. So Epps putting guys in the right position. I don't remember what it was last year, but it was one game where Epps moves a corner. The corner's able to jump the route, gets the interception. And I said, if it were hockey, he would have had an assist, because he put the corner in the right spot. The corner gets the INT. He's a tough player. I really like Epps a lot. And I think he's I think he's underrated. I think he took a lot of grief. Do I think he's the best safety in the NFL? No. But I'm going to tell you something that Peyton Manning once told me, that anybody who plays the game of football and acts like they never had their head bludgeoned or made a bad play didn't play. Because the NFL humbles everybody. It's just the great ones, they humble others more than they get humbled, but everybody gets humbled. Okay. I don't think Epps is the best safety in all the NFL. I think he's very, very good, though. Again, took some criticism last year. That's just the name of the game. It's easy sitting on a couch, being critical, watching something in slow motion. But I can tell you Marcus Epps is a legitimate safety and really good in this team, and he's a player. Now let's talk about Trayvon Mullen. This is a guy was the number one safety in his class coming out. Raiders picked him, and he's gotten better. Okay. Has he blossomed like I think people thought he would? No, I don't. But I don't think he's a bad player. He continues to grind. Is he a guy that I would expect to get another deal from the Raiders? Yes, potentially. Potentially. Do I think it's 100%? Probably not. But I think it's significantly higher than 50. He's a guy that you're just waiting for him to take that next step. You're just come on, Tre'Von. He's got the talent. He's a great kid. Great kid. And I know I'm an old man, double his age, so I can call him a kid. But he's a terrific young man. And he's a guy you root for. But again, is he at a superstar level? No. Could he be? Yes. He's got all of the God-given gifts that you want. His vision is very good. His ability to see, to have his eyes forward but see here, his lateral vision, just very good. I would almost say his proprioception, just that ability to, without focusing on it, see things in space. He just got it. Interesting player. I think there's room for him to grow. I think there's a lot of room for him to grow. And because of how many years he's been in the league, he needs to show that now. But again, I'm a buyer on Trayvon Mullen. Then there's a guy that I really like. I really like this kid. Excuse me. I like him as a person, and I like him as a football player. Last year, OTA mini camps and started training camp. They were trying to get him on the field a lot more. Isaiah Palomo. This kid, he has the ability. He's got it. He's got it. And someone asked me one time, how do you describe it? And I said, I don't know, but when you see it, you know it. Just, he's got a nose for the ball. He gets around it. He makes plays. Dexter's in there yelling for daddy. He makes those plays. And I just need you to know that guy, I believe in him immensely. And I like his talent. I love his balance. If you watched his feet, if you watched his feet, I think one of the things that sets out to me to him is you very rarely find his feet in a bad spot. Now you say, why is that important for a safety? Okay. Because if you have your feet out of order, you can't plant the foot and go and make a big cut. And so you'll see a lot of guys who are really fast. Jaycee Bennett, by the way, this is a great example of Jaycee Bennett, who they've always been able to use their speed so that maybe their technique wasn't great. Well, you get to the pros and everybody's fast. Pola-Mao has good technique, very good technique. Now, again, confidence, confidence, confidence. You got to get the confidence. You got to be able to look at things and then trust your judgment. I think some, and I may be wrong, I think sometimes Isaiah Pola-Mao doesn't trust his instincts enough. He's got to learn to trust his instincts. And if he does, I think that kid could be really good. Now, so when you start talking about the safety position, then we're going to end with Chris Smith. Let me tell you about Chris Smith. At Georgia, he was the reason they won a national title. Great presence in the locker room, hard worker. Showed a little bit early last year for the Raiders, and then he struggled with confidence. Now, are you starting to get the theme here? That's normal with young players. I understand expectations are, oh my God, we're going to get a rookie and he's going to be great. And he may be, but not all of them step in and are great right away. It takes time. So Smith, some things happened to him last year in the NFL. They never happened to him before. Hey, all of a sudden now, he goes to lay the wood on somebody and bam, he gets hit by a wide receiver and he goes flying. Because this is the NFL now. There ain't a lot of 5'8", 160-pound wide receivers in the National Football League. And there's a collision. He goes flying. It's all right. It's all right, young blood. Get up. It's all good. And he's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. I like that kid. A lot of people ready to throw him away. And you know what? He may not develop. We don't know. But remember, I talked about past experience based on present knowledge to make a wise adjustment. It's going to be interesting to watch Chris. Not every guy does come along. This is why earlier in the draft, rounds 1 and 2, it is so vitally important to to not miss. But when you start getting out of round 2, you start looking at guys that there's reasons they're not ones or twos. Okay, there was a reason Chris Smith has to develop a little bit. There's a reason that JB has to develop a little bit. And you got to give them that. So I think when you look at the Raiders, you look at I think they're set at 2 corners. Do I think Face could play one? Yeah. Do I think Jacorian could? I do. But I think they need it. To play in this league, you got to have great corners and great defensive line. Yeah, linebackers are important, but I don't even think you have to have great ones. Just got to have very good ones. I think you can see here the Raiders are very. Let me say this. I think the Raiders understand they need another CB1. I think that they understand that very clear. But there are 4 guys that I think can all play, but they need a dude. Whether that's a first-round pick with Terry and Arnold or another corner. There are a couple guys with dude potential. Or it's a trade, or it's something happens in camp and a free agent gets cut or whatever. And then safety, I've been telling you for weeks, I think they need another safety. Now, there's some guys who are on the roster who've yet proven or really done anything, who they have potential, who could be that guy. But I think the Raiders better off right now at safety than they are at corner. But I think they need one of each. I think they need one of each. I would not be shocked if they went CB in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if they went safety in the 3rd or 4th. I think there's some good ones out there. There's some really good safeties, developmental guys, but good guys. So there's a breakdown of your defensive backfield. Let's get to a couple of emails, if you don't mind. Okay, the first one comes to us from Rick J. Hey, Hondo, I thought you would find this interesting. In your podcast, you mentioned people who couldn't afford Allegiant to see a game on the road. Now, before we go any farther, I got an email, I don't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, from a guy saying his family just couldn't afford Allegiant and he'd like to bring his family to a game. And I said, then try a road game. And so this is what that person's responding to. My wife and I have 2 sons and live in Harlingen, Texas. To go to a game, not a rivalry, in Vegas for hotel tickets and air was $6,000. Wow. We got tickets to Denver, air, hotel, and stayed 4 days. Would have been 2 in Las Vegas for $23.20. Great suggestion to that guy. I love the podcast, Rick J. Now, I had another guy on Twitter send me almost an identical story to this guy. I don't think his savings was that much. I think his was about 50. He saved about 50% going to a road game. This guy saved almost 66%. But yeah, road games are a great way to go see the Raiders. Great way to go see the Raiders. This one comes us from Aaron T. Hondo, I'm 17-year-old considering journalism. You make everything about your job look amazing. What's the worst part? Aaron T. Ooh. Aaron, that's a really good question. And by the way, he spelled out Raiders. Aaron, there's a couple things about my job that I don't know that I would say are fun, but they certainly don't deter me. I'll give you an example. A few days ago, I talked about Jaycee Bennett as a potential breakout candidate. And the people, he's trash, he's horrible, throw him away. I mean, and then you start getting the emails and the social media responses or the comments of, oh yeah, Hondo said he's going to be a superstar. No, I didn't. I just said, I think he's a guy that's poised that could break out this year. I never said, I said I think he has the talent to be a superstar, but we don't know what he's going to do. And I have learned something the hard way. I have this platform, and there's a lot of people who don't. So attacking me just makes them feel good about themselves. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't mind it anymore. I have just learned if they're attacking me, they're leaving somebody else alone. But it's hard because then you'll get people that say, "Hey, Hondo, I heard that you said this. Can you tell me what makes you feel that way?" And I don't read their email on the air. I just put, "Sorry, I don't know who you were listening to. I didn't say that." That's hard. It's hard because not the idiots that do it, but those that get caught in the crossfire. "Hey, I heard this. Can you explain it?" And so that's that's a difficult part. And then I'll give you another one. Um, so a Dallas shock jock comes out and makes a fantasy football prediction that the Raiders trade for Dak. Okay, rumors. And then everybody wants you to comment on rumors. I don't comment on other people's stuff. Just not doing it. And Raider Nation is such a big, massive fan base that people love doing anything to get you to click, click, click. Because Raider Nation, there's so many they do and they get played. I hate that. And that's not even something that I literally hate because it affects me. I hate that it affects Raider Nation. I hate that. That stinks. I see, for example, I reported at the start of free agency that the Raiders had kicked the tires on some trades, but nothing was imminent. Nothing. Just that they had kicked the tires on a particular superstar player. But nothing was imminent at all. Man, people run ancillary websites. Carpenter says Raiders making a big not true, never said it. And so that's a hard part. And you want the platform. You want the following. You want the audience, Aaron. But you got to also understand that comes with you're going to get criticized. You're going to have things said that you didn't say, and you just can't defend yourself. You just let it go, keep going. I don't ever get into beefs with people. I just let it go. Occasionally, I may say something like, "Well, clearly you're not intelligent enough to read or at least comprehend what you read," because I think that I had an English teacher, Mrs. Foltz, that used to say that all the time, and I always liked it. So I do use that. But that's part of it. It's part of it. And is it negative that make me not want to do the job? No. I love the job. Love it. So you just learn to let that go. But that's something that you got to be prepared. A lot of people don't have thick skin. A lot of people don't have thick skin. So grow some thick skin and you'll be fine. It's all right. It's all good. Okay, the next one comes to us from Lonnie. Lonnie V. Lonnie V. Lonnie says, Hondo, I know that you covered Calvin Johnson after he was drafted by the Raiders. I'm curious, do you think he is Marvin Harrison? And would that be somebody, if the Raiders moved up and didn't get the quarterback they wanted, they would pick Marvin Harrison? How do you just compare him to Megatron? That's some Lonnie V. Okay, great question. I did. I loved covering Calvin. Great guy. Better family. Unbelievable. Just great kid from a great, his mom and dad are just precious, salt of the earth people. And so is Megatron. But I'm just loved his parents. I think that Marvin Harrison is a great wide receiver. He is not Megatron. Just leave it right there. He's not. He's great. I think he's going to be great. I think he's a good kid. But I don't put him anywhere in Megatron's field of play. Maybe he becomes that. Maybe. I think he is an elite player. I know scouts told me last year, if he came out last year, he would have been the number one wide receiver. So I think he is a great player, and I think he'll be a great player day one. But no, I've watched him. I've watched him in person. I watched him in high school. Marvin Harrison is a very good football player, and he's a star. But no, not Megatron. No. All right. Last one. I thought this one was kind of fun. This comes from Martin. And Martin W says, hey, Hondo, you mentioned before about giving a coach 20 games to get his staff in order, start to get a roster that fits what he wants to do. And you said something that intrigued me. I'd love for you to explain. You talked about a coaching staff in order. What do you mean by that? Once he hires his staff, isn't his staff set? That's from Martin W, and he is in West Virginia. Martin, so a couple of things here. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. When you're hiring a staff and you're a first-time coach or a new coach, you've got to, coaching staffs have to blend. I knew a guy one time who was one of the best coaches at his position that there was. So he comes on a staff, and everybody on the staff was relatively young, and they all had young kids. Well, his kids were all graduated and had lives. So he didn't have a chance to really gel and become a part of the staff, because when that staff was out of work, they had young kids. And so they would get together for birthday parties and everything else, but he didn't have young kids. And it wasn't that he was a bad guy. There just wasn't that fit on the staff. So after 1 year, he's like, man, I'm going to go somewhere else. Wasn't fired, wasn't disliked, just wasn't a fit. Now, I know almost an identical situation in college, but the guy's kids were older, but he had grandchildren. So he fit in great. He would go to all the parties. He would bring the grandchildren to the players, to the other coaches, and it was a fit. That's what I'm talking about with coaches fitting. Now, I'm going to finish your question in a minute here, but Dexter Ernest Wayne he heard Daddy talking. Dexter, can you say hi to everybody? Say hi. Can you say hi? Oh, you're going to wave and say hi? All right, give Daddy a kissy. I love you. I'm going to eat. Okay, say bye-bye. All right, there you go. That's my son, Dexter Ernest Wayne. And so that coach had grandchildren, and so he was able to fit. And you may say, well, why does that matter if you go to work? Because you got to have that unity of staff. I'll give you a good one. I don't have his permission to tell you who it was. I wish I did. I'm sorry. But there was a Raider coach a couple years ago who went to a guy on the staff, the other side of the ball, and said, hey, I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but I'm noticing this. The other coach was like, man, thanks. And they were able to make a really cool adjustment. All right. Why? Because they had relationship. And think about this. When you work very closely with other people, it's important that there be a staff continuity. That's probably not the right word. Staff esprit de corps. And so, sometimes coaches just don't fit. I'll give you another example. I knew a coach, very successful coach, who, if a player screwed up, he didn't mind his staff telling him, hey, you effed up. But he would tell his staff, you never call a player and attack their character. You are an F up. Don't do that. He wouldn't tolerate it. So he goes and hires a really, really good coach. First day of practice, I'm standing there next to my buddy, Mike Griffith, who now covers the Georgia Bulldogs. And this new coach screams at a GA and attacks him personally. You turn to this guy who was new on the beat. I said, he won't be here long. Why? That coach is never going to tolerate the way he talks to people. And sure enough, he wasn't there very long. So it's just, sometimes it's just, you can hire a guy because you really like the success. I mean, I I I should probably not say, I'll say it. So there's a particular food that I like, and it's a restaurant in the Midwest called Cheddar's, and they've got a soup, a cheddar cheese soup that's really good. So every time I have a chance to go to a Cheddar's when I'm back in the Midwest, I always will go and eat at a Cheddar's and get a bowl of cheddar cheese soup. So one day I somehow found the recipe online and I tried to make it. Well, it didn't taste the same. The ingredients were the same or whatever, didn't taste the same. Sometimes you bring a coach from a staff and it just isn't a fit. Maybe the players don't like him. Could be maybe his personality is different. So that's what I mean. You got to let coaches to be able to adjust, and that's just why you give them 20 games. There's a feeling out process, and if one of them fails after year one, no big deal. They make a change, go replace them, and they keep moving forward. So I hope that answers some of your questions today. I have to give a shout out. My brother-in-law Joe is one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth. Just love him dearly. I am blessed to have the wife that I have, but my wife's family are wonderful people, and I love her mom and dad. Her brother is a dear friend of mine. His wife is just sweetheart among sweethearts, and he has a friend who is a huge Raider. And I just want to give Scott Naimi a big hello. Scott has found the podcast and all that, and appreciate you listening, Scott. And you're very fortunate to be friends with Joe. He's one of the best. All right, everybody, follow me on IG when you go to Hondo SR on X, formerly known as Twitter. When you go to at Hondo Carpenter, remember si.com/NFL/Raiders is where you find all of our articles. And by the way, for all of you doing the drinking game about Hondo taking his glasses off, I didn't wear them. I bet you don't have this in your drinking game, though. Put them on.